Welcome, Robbie Taylor Hunt. Welcome back to the podcast, Robbie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me back. I'm thrilled. Yeah, Nick and Taylor were such sweethearts. It was so lovely working with them both. They're just very nice guys, which makes my life so much easier because they're just coming to working with you with a nice, grounded sense of collaboration and wanting to talk about it. Particularly, I mean, I guess the only thing I can really speak to about it is in their relationship with talking about intimacy coordination and working on intimate content. Intimacy coordination being the slightly new thing it is. For some people, it's a bit kind of not controversial, is a bit of a strong word, but contentious or whatever. Sometimes actors can come into talking to you with an energy of either like, whoa, this is so wild, or a bit like, I'm not sure about this, or whatever it is. That doesn't happen so much anymore, but we had that in the kind of earlier days. Whereas Nick and Taylor just were so ready and wanting to talk about it in just practical, creative terms. They just understood why I was there and what I was doing, and they were on board with it and happy to have all those chats. So professionally, very nice. They're very collaborative, which is always very nice for me. And then just, between takes and all that, they're just nice. So that's always makes a difference when you're working with actors that you're like, oh, I'm just looking forward to getting to kind of be around on set with them when they're just kind of good people you can get on with, rather than sometimes actors can be a bit scary or a bit more intimidating and etc. And that's not true for these guys. Yeah, that's such an interesting question because obviously I don't get to work on a lot of the enemy bit. Like when they're enemies, I'm not around. Like I don't see them like argument scenes. I'm not on set. I'm at home having my lunch. And then they're like, it's the first kiss, you're in. So yeah, I think it's probably comes to, in terms of my work, it's about understanding that there's probably going to be kind of conflict there. It's going to feel surprising. There's all those types of character understandings will go into maybe how we talk around what the first instances of intimacy are and how that might manifest. So that was definitely true of the first kiss at New Year's, where obviously that it feels sort of full and there's a sort of hunger to it. But it's conflicted and all that kind of energy. I will bring that conversation as did Matthew and the guys to that discussion. So I think that's the kind of how that legacy of that enemies might fuse into our work, and then how that transitions into lovers, as well as just knowing where we start at with these characters and then where we find them later on, particularly towards the kind of later moments of intimacy and togetherness, of like making sure there's a journey there and the intimacy is part of that journey. So you want to make sure you're doing justice to that first enemy section, which obviously isn't as nice. We like the lovers section more. Yeah, well, working on that scene was so special in terms of my the process as well. There's lots of scenes that, like, as my queer male intimacy coordinator, I work on quite a lot of queer male content. And so I'll often come to queer sex scenes with a certain amount of general, how do I approach this, and thinking about the kind of tropes that we generally see and what feels like we see too much of, and what I know queer audiences will roll their eyes at or get frustrated by, or go, I'm just so bored of seeing this, even if there's some truth to it, but just I've just seen it too much and it doesn't feel representative, or actually there's no truth to it. In terms of the kind of feel of the scene, but then also importantly around the kind of realism of what I call as like sexual mechanics of the scene, of like what realistically can happen and does happen for this type of sex act with people of these kinds of bodies in this point of their life. So there's all that kind of stuff that I will think about and bring in and bring to the scene and bring to conversations first with the director, so Matthew. But what was so special about Red, White and Royal Blue is Matthew was so brilliant and collaborative as well. I mean, I've never had such a process of collaboration in a prep period before going into shooting. Like I was, I'd met Matthew for my interview and I got the job, and then I had like my first meeting going in to talk to him, and I didn't know how long I was going to be there for, but I'd sort of blocked off the afternoon. We ended up having like a 3-hour session, just the two of us, like charting the moments of intimacy. I'm now going away from just Paris, but like all the moments of intimacy and thinking about what the story was for all these characters, for these two characters, and then what we wanted and what it had to feel like and what kind of the positions would be, and all these things which we really did a deep dive on. And I'm a theatre boy originally, and Matthew's a theatre boy. And I think it's a bit of that. In theatre, you have more rehearsal time. You can really get into it, and there's a bit more of a sense of that collaboration. I mean, lots of film and TV people work in that way as well. So that was so lovely and special in terms of the process for this. And then over the week, because we filmed the Paris scene, not right at the end, but in the kind of latter half of shooting. So we also had time during shooting to have more conversations around it and update our thinking about it as we were learning more about the characters through shooting, and knowing the practicalities of what the set was like, and how much time we had and all those things of what we wanted. And I blocked out some sort of storyboard-esque sketches and things to show Matthew, to be is this what you're imagining? And this and these kind of positions might be what we want. And just for it feeling creatively right, because we really wanted to get it right. And also for just saving us time and energy on the day, which makes the actors happier as well. Filming any intimate scene is a very strenuous thing to have to do. And so you're wanting to be as clear as possible going into that, what's what, so that it can be as smooth sailing as possible, as you can get the most good stuff out of it. And that was all able to happen. So it was a really lovely process for that. Yeah. But yeah, and we had rehearsal for the scene and as well. And you have that rehearsal, you have that prep, everyone has those conversations. Every time that's better. There's never harm done by that. It doesn't, right. Some people don't want it to be too mapped out, and they want to be able to be quite free and find things on the day. And I'm all about that. But I still think having those prep conversations and rehearsal time, you don't need to block it all out in a rehearsal even. You can just make sure everyone's clear and talk any issues through and what might happen, and get a skeleton of it. And then on the day, you can kind of get into it more. That's my sort of preferred model and best practice generally. But it's either not possible because of schedules and money and urgency, and one bit's filming in Morocco and the other bit's filming in Norway, so you can't get the right people in the right place and all of that. But there's but sometimes people just don't want to do that, because also they're look, I have to do this quite intense to have to simulate sex, so I'd rather not do it too much as well. So if we can do the kind of minimal version, that comes up sometimes. But for this, there was a real sense of how absolutely central getting their romantic storyline, and part of that is their intimate life and sexual life together, right? So if we're going to get it right, we can't just hope it goes well on the day. It is important. And yeah, I feel like it paid off. People seem pleased about it. So
just a little. They're only a little. Just a little.
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, I remember little moments, I won't disclose when, but little moments of where you're trying to figure out the choreography, and this is me admitting my faults of not choreographing it perfectly. So someone trips or gets kind of tangled up or caught in each other, and being and not in the kind of oh, that's fun, playful, good for the characters, of being the actors are tangled up and we haven't figured out where their limbs need to go, and that being me either making an offer that doesn't work or is unclear or something. We definitely had some of that, in the kind of fall over the back of the sofa before when they're in the hotel room before
that's in the bloopers. It made it into the blooper reel.
What is it? I haven't even seen that. So, I'll go find the bloopers. I'll do a react to the bloopers. Yeah, well, there we go. Yeah, so things like that, of me being on monitor being of knowing that I just need to make sure that they know where their knees are going so that no one gets hurt. Certainly things like that were memorable. And then also a thing often happens, and these guys loved it, of as I think they've talked about in interviews, we have as intimacy coordinators barriers. So you use different kind of external barriers which can be placed between actors to allow for there to be kind of thrusting action, etc. But that being going into barriers rather than body to body, right? We use them sometimes. And so as I often do when I come to rehearsal, is I kind of get out my bag of tricks and I go, here's all the things we can use and blah, blah, blah. And one of them is a little Pilates ball that you sort of deflate a bit, and then that can go between people. It's surrounded by material. I think they were infused by that and sort of amused by it, as people are. It was coined by Yara Dor, an intimacy coordinator I work with, she kind of invented it, and she called it the bouncer, which is quite funny as well. But then Nick in an interview, I think you can go find this interview, did they change it? Or maybe, I don't know. Anyway, someone like talked about it as a beach ball. And I was like, no, it's not a beach ball. I don't bring a beach ball. It makes me seem deeply unprofessional. The Pilates ball has a certain professionalism about it, I think. So in case, he ever says that again, it's Pilates ball. I'm very professional. It's not a beach ball. I'm not sort of bringing lilos and all sorts.
Just picturing this like bright, colorful.
Me too.
Exactly. It's just about like getting that out in like rehearsal. You're trying to seem very serious with your actors, and you're like, let's play beach ball. But no, it's like a very discreet little small neutral coloured Pilates ball that I cover in a skin tone material. It's all very professional, rather than a beach ball. Yeah, there's like funny lines being thrown in during moments of passion, and like the red room scene where they're kissing super passionate and then they break away and they're sort of going, I'm looking at a bookcase and all that kind of silly, like you have to be aware of what you want out of the like intimacy to feel so passionate so that moment can break away and feel like earned and funny. So yeah, it's just having an eye for it and like responding well with Matthew and understanding what Matthew's trying to get out of the scene overall and how it situates, like how the moment of intimacy situates in the scene and then how that scene situates in the movie, just making sure that it fits in basically. Yeah, but it's so fun to get to have a bit of the com as well as the rom. I think with the I know we haven't talked about it yet, the scene, polo scene where they sneak off and it's all intercut, like that. It wasn't a challenge in terms of like the energy of it. Like I knew that the energy had to feel kind of like really excited and like fiery and full and like a release and all that kind of stuff. But like maybe some challenges around exactly how we wanted to end that. We like, what we see in the end of that moment because we wanted to have a sense of like it was moving towards like something sexual or like more intimate than what we're going to see. But we also don't feel we need to see loads of it in that moment. But you also don't want to make it like really feel like ... So like there's a bit of like a balance to be made. But obviously the thing is that editors are amazing. So editors like, we shoot a lot of, obviously there's so much stuff that we shoot that we don't use, but then how they edited it and cut it together with the polo and like zooming in on buttocks, bouncing in saddles and all those kind of things is like wildly more intimate than anything we could have achieved in that scene. Is like so good and is just brilliant. And that's, I can't take any credit for that, obviously. That's Matthew and editing team. So things like that, were easy problem solves of that kind of stuff. I think I felt a bit of pressure for the Paris scene of like, this is the scene I always kind of wanted to have been able to watch as a young queer person, and like I don't think we get good, like properly romantic scenes between two men and having sex because it's about like love and connection. There's more stuff now, but I still don't quite know anything else that does it quite the same as Red, White, and Royal Blue. So knowing that we were coming into that felt like a bit of a maybe more of just a pressure than a challenge. It was a challenge, I guess, of making sure that was true, but also, we're not making. It's not like activism necessarily, like it's creative content. It has to be true to the story and the characters first and foremost, but also just aware of that thing in my head of like, but also this has meaning out in the world for people who watch it, right? And this situates in a vast emptiness for what queer people are used to watching. So yeah, balancing like wanting to do right for that and for queer viewers and for my like little teenage queer version of myself, whilst also making sure we absolutely prioritize the like story and the characters and what's right for these people, and bring that to life and doing justice to the fans of the book and all of those things. Felt like there was a lot on top of that moment, which is ultimately like screen time wise, not a long moment, right? And so that was definitely a pressure, but never one that felt like super challenging. It was always such a privilege and a pleasure to get to grapple with that and think about it. As I think we've talked a bit about last time, like as an intimacy coordinator, it's a creative role, a movement role, but first and foremost, it's like, there's the kind of safety and making sure well-being side of things. So I don't always get to do a lot of the creative stuff. With this, it felt like I was it because Matthew was so brilliant, and the actors were so brilliant. I was able to have more kind of creative input, and so that on top of it also being received so well is just so special for me. It's I'm so like I'd be touched and sort of moved by it no matter what. And then the cherry on the cake of it all is, this is exactly the kind of thing that I've sort of spent 15 years going, I wish this scene existed, and being so frustrated that it didn't exist, and like watching Brokeback Mountain and being like, okay, sure, but like, why is this all I'm getting over and over again? In terms of what I'm seeing on screen. Yeah. So, and I think I kind of hoped that people would be like, oh, great, and pleased about that being a new thing. But I feel like, yeah, there's a bit of a buzz to it that that I didn't expect it to speak to people as much or in such deep ways as some people seem to be responding. It's just amazing. Oh my God. Yeah, just I'm so thrilled and so happy to hear that. I think it just shows how important it is and to make better representations of these things. And we had a first rehearsal really early before, well, not really early, but like before shooting, which was time I had with the actors where we did some sort of basics of kind of connection and intimacy and touch and exploration of like breath and how to like have that connection and share that with each other, and giving it the kind of professional structure so that they could go to those personal places and know that they had a professional structure to it. And then I was always available if anyone needed. But then at that point, they were pretty solid and clear in it. Matthew was brilliant working with them and very sensitive on that and felt very comfortable working on that. So it didn't feel necessary for me to be there for the kind of moments of like chemistry or look or like closeness and things like that. And I think it's important to not, it's important to not just be around, lurking around when I'm not needed. Like I could have been there. Sure, I could have given some notes or thoughts or whatever it is. But you don't want people getting bothered by you sitting around all the time, not being very active, because then it starts to be like, oh, well, then why are you here? Or like it can sort of affect how you're there on set generally, which then might affect how I manage to be on other days. But also it's sort of, I don't know, I worry it can get a bit like patronizing or hand-holding you when they're totally fun. They don't like, I don't need them to make a big deal, like it feeling like a really, like it will be a nerve-wracking moment when it doesn't need to be a nerve-wracking moment. I'd be like, team, you've got this. You know what you're doing. You're good. We've done our rehearsal stuff. Matthew's amazing. You're great with each other. Go to town, right? You'll be fine. So that was how it kind of ended up with this. Yeah, if I was nervous that Matthew was a nightmare or that they weren't able to kind of bring it to life, then I might have been more like, you probably should have me. But that wasn't true. They so knew the characters and the story, and they knew what they were doing, and it was run by a good captain in Matthew. So yeah, I wasn't around for some of the moments of chemistry and connection and things like that. Yeah, fine. Like, I remember, I think I checked in about it afterwards, because there was one that I was like, exactly like how close are they getting on the like pontoon thing? Yeah. Like obviously I'm always clear and know what they're going to be wearing, so I know what type of like trunks they're going to be in. Sorry, I know there's very like American Anglicisms about like swimwear they're going to be wearing and all those sorts of things, to make sure that there's no risks of things feeling more nude and exposing, particularly when wet. So it had all those chats, so that was clear. So there wasn't going to be surprises there. And we'd been clear of what level of kind of intimacy was on the cards. And again, it's usually like, what's the kind of max world that we're going to be in for what we're going to expect between these characters? And I get that very clear with Matthew, director, and then make sure the boys know about it. And then I'm like, look, you're going to be this level of clothing. This is what the maximum is going to be asked. That was quite late in the process. So we were like, look, you know, how are you feeling about it? And they're like, we're good. And again, I'm always a phone call away. And then everyone was fine. Like I say, really so quickly, like in rehearsal, they were already just they get on so well. They're just like good pals. And then, and also so respectful and clear and about it that, you know, I was definitely needed. I'm also not writing myself out of a job, but in terms of the like, holding space and care, they were so already careful with each other, and the set was generally really careful and caring and supportive. And Matthew was sensitive with them, and the AD team was great at working with them. Costume was really lovely with them. So, you know, it meant that there was all those things in place that meant that I was like, I know it's going to be great and they're going to be fine. And because all those things were there, it was fine. Whereas other jobs I work on, it's a bit more like things aren't great on set. So a scene like that, I'd be more like, I'm going to be there because it'd be more likely that things would go a bit rogue or someone would say something or whatever. Whereas I was just very confident that wasn't going to happen. And I didn't. And everyone had a good time. It definitely wasn't me being like, let's do toe touch toe moment. Here we go, action. We would have talked about where touch could be because some people really don't like their feet being touched or anything, right? So we would have talked about that. That would have been clear. So we knew that was on the cards as like we could use. And then I imagine it would have been a thing that we were filming, and then that was sort of like, you know, by the nature of body positions, feet were kind of close, and then we go like, oh, that's a good moment we should catch as well. You know, we have like a structure and a plan, and then you, of course, discover things when you're there. So maybe that came out of it that way. I don't remember it being Matthew or the actors or me being like, let's definitely get that. I think it was like, we knew we wanted lots of little moments of cutaways of bits of touch, right? So I think we knew that was probably on the cards as an option, and then seeing it like worked, and then we had it. But the guys were always discovering like great things. It certainly wasn't me just being like, do this and I solved everything. Like so much of it came from them. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were kind of discovering that as well. That definitely wasn't me. I never was like, look, picture this, kiss on the shoulder every time. I couldn't tell you if there was Matthew or the guys. They might have had a conversation, so I wouldn't like to decide for them. But when you have that scope and that comfortable, you've done the foundations and the work as we were able to do. It means that you can find those little things, and it can feel organic and creative and characterful, and them knowing that that's okay and in a space where they can find those discoveries. So it's probably just coming from their brilliant work. They hated each other. They comfortable with each other. I mean, obviously, I wasn't there when they had chemistry read, and I wasn't there when they first met in rehearsals, all those things. So I don't know. Like a lot of that stuff will have happened in just getting to know each other outside of intimacy rehearsals. Dog. There wasn't really things where I felt like they weren't comfortable together. You know, there's the understandable, normal sense of like performing simulated sex or intimacy is just a big ask for anyone, and so doing that, you need to make sure you're looking after people and supporting people, and there can be certain levels of like fatigue that come through a day of filming, no matter what, particularly when it's more kind of physically exertive, whether that is riding a horse or doing a stunt or having to kiss or simulate sex or whatever it is. There's certainly, it's not like every moment was like happy clappy, everyone's having the best time of their lives. Like there's still work, and you're still trying to do it. It can still be long and frustrating, and when shots aren't quite working and having to get angles right, etc. So that was definitely at moments, as it is with anything and any moments of filming. But I know it would be more juicy and exciting if I could be like, there was this one day they really didn't get along, but there's like, to my knowledge, they were really good pals, and there wasn't. As you have to get, even when they're good pals, you have to build levels of comfort together no matter what. And actually, sometimes even because they become good pals, it becomes a bit weird then having to be intimate in a way that when you're like don't know someone at all, you're like, this is weird, but in a different way of like, we're just working, we have to make it work. Whereas then you're sort of mates hanging out, and then you have to transition into that sort of intimacy space. So that we made sure we had a clear structure of how to flip into that quality together and then feel comfortable and supported. With various little things we do to kind of let them leave behind having a laugh on lunch break and come into a space of getting into character and connecting intimately. There's something that I'd give them for that, but that's not really discomfort. It's just part of that switch, flicking that switch and shift. Sure, yeah. Obviously, I can talk less about that because it's not come out yet. But yeah, it's so funny that year. Not like January to January, but whenever Red, White, and Roll Blue, and then into Mary and George. I just worked with Nick for like most of my year that year, which I think I've worked with one other actor on 2 different projects, but generally, obviously, you're working with all sorts. So it was very nice to get to have that kind of long-running relationship with someone, and you get develop a bit more of a shorthand, and they know all the garments you're bringing, they know how you work. You can do less of the like easing them in and more like, you know me, you trust me, you know what I'm talking about. Here we go, and can just get to it. And ditto, he could just be more clear with me about what he needs and what he wants, and doesn't have to do so much of a dance around it, because we're just like, look, we know how each other work, and there's already a trust there. So that was such a blessing, and so lovely to get to have that with someone. And as people will see, and people probably already seen from the trailer, which I believe you've done a little react to, that it's a very different energy. So please, Red, White, and Royal Blue fans, don't come into that expecting your same old lovely Prince Henry, because it is certainly, a different energy.
Red, White, and Royal Blue was a good warm-up for Nick in working with American Joy.
It was good. It was that way round, like that he made these projects. Let's just say that. I'll be so curious what people, particularly the Red, White, and Royal Blue fans, think of it. It was a really fun project for kind of queer intimacy again, and with Red, White, Royal Blue, obviously I entirely worked with just 2 of them, whereas Mary and George worked with Nick a lot, but also loads of other characters, so much intimacy from so many different angles, queer and not queer, and all sorts of things. Well, we'll see what makes it in. But I'm really, really looking forward to seeing it. It was we were filming for like 6 months, and it was like a lot of big stuff going on in that. And by nature of TV instead of film, it's like often kind of quicker, and you're like jumping around different episodes and who's what and where you are, and it spans a very long time and different countries and all this. So it felt kind of more epic in a way that was like, whoa. And I feel like I less know how it's going to kind of end up. With Red, White, and Royal Blue is lovely and kind of more contained, and in the you kind of know you can chart these 2 guys' story a bit more easily. Really looking forward to seeing it.
What a great cast.
Oh,
so
Julianne Moore, absolute icon.
Yeah.
Can't believe, that was amazing. She's so brilliant. And Niamh Algar, amazing, who's opposite Julianne a lot. Tony's great. Yeah. And like there's loads of brilliant actors who I got to work with, which was such a delight. And I mean, it's based on a true story. Do you know this? Like there's Mary Villiers and George Villiers, real, like, you know, which is just so wild. And it's so fun to get to do historical queer stuff, of being like, look at all this queer stuff going on in history. You think it's this invention from the last 10 years. Queer people have been doing weird shit for hundreds of years. I can't wait.
So last question. Would you rather have to get the sex talk from President Claremont or King James?
Easily Claremont. Oh my goodness, easily Claremont. I mean, that scene with Alex, where he comes out, is just makes my heart explode, right? So like, it's so beautiful, and so I'd have any conversation I could have with her in any kind of that capacity. Amazing. King James, chaotic nightmare. Like not nightmare, true chaos, as you'll see. So I'm gonna definitely go for the former.